Okay, welcome everybody. Nice to see all of you again. I think we've got about 50 people registered for today's session, but I think as is usual, we struggle to get everyone who has registered to come into the session. There are a whole host of reasons for that. And, hopefully in time, we're going to get better at this in terms of converting, people who are interested to people actually who sit on the session. Today, I'm really, really pleased to invite, or rather to introduce, a long-standing friend of mine who's going to be our guest speaker. I had to beg and plead with him to make the time to speak to us because he's incredibly busy. And last night I was running through his session with him. We were just doing a test on his videos, and he was telling me the story where one of the biggest projects that he had in his life was the rebranding of Vodacom. I don't know if any of you remember, but when they changed their color virtually overnight from blue to yellow. So I took that as a challenge, and I thought, well, if Enzo could rebrand the whole of Vodacom, like in a matter of days, I could rebrand my presentation. So I've rebranded my presentation yellow because Enzo is a really senior executive at MTN, and I thought, just to be kind to him, I could do the same thing. So today is the second of our Leadership Count sessions. You remember last month, we had Neil Jacobson, who talked a lot about exponential change in terms of the digital world. Enzo is going to talk about something different that I feel really matters for us, but I will get to introducing him in a minute. I just want to deal with the housekeeping issues quickly and get those out the way. So just really want to touch base. We've been running for a month now in terms of our program. And I think it's always useful that we just take stock and we see how we're doing and we learn our lessons and we just get better. So what we touched on last week is that we feel we're struggling a little bit in terms of converting interest into active use of the platform. And we explained last week the challenges in terms of joining these links, that we need to be clear with our learners and all the educators that it's a two-step process. The first is that you need to signal interest to register. You will get sent an email confirmation by return, and you then need to click on that link to bring you into the session. If I see how we've done over the last month, we've had registered interest in the order of 1,300, and we've brought on about 600 users. So the interest is there, the interest is clearly growing, and I think we've just got to get better at converting interest into attendance and from them to keep getting better. So I think the signs are positive. We understand that it's very challenging in terms of the data connections, that if the kids aren't at school, and many of them aren't at the time of the sessions, then they really don't have the data and connectivity to join us. And I think with the schools opening and closing and stopping and starting, that has presented a little bit of a challenge. But we've had 180 odd participants over our 4 webinars. We've had nearly 500 learners on our past paper sessions. We've had just over 2,000 users come into our hotspots. And there are about 330 odd learners that have downloaded and are using the Karibo app. So all of that is positive, and it is a nice indication. So maybe quickly just to sign in, if we can run through the schools, just get a quick sense, 30 seconds, how you're all doing. If you just want to jump in, let's start with Kenilworth, if someone's on the call from Kenilworth.
Hello, hello.
Yep, carry on.
Yes, Kenilworth is here. We are available.
And how are things at your school? Are you open? How are you doing?
Yes, we're open. We're taking it one day at a time, and yeah, we are doing good.
Very good. You're welcome. Zain, I see from Kliptown.
Yeah, thanks, Clifford. Good afternoon, everyone. So Kliptown is doing well. out of the 187 learners registered, we had about 170 almost every day. So we're doing quite well. Few problems here and there. Hoping things will last. I think, like I said in the last meeting, unions are quiet now. Civic leaders also, they are quiet. So it looks as if we are plain sailing right through until the end of the year, hopefully.
Brilliant. Keep going. Norcom Chauke, I saw you on the call.
Yes. Thank you so much, Clifford. Yeah, we are open. So far, so good. Today, we met with the Karabo team. We met with the learners. We've actually explained how the app works and all that. I'm expecting a lot of them to be joining us. So I believe that the numbers that you were talking about will probably increase because most of the kids from our school are already buying into the project. So far, so good. And we want to thank you and the entire team for your involvement. I'm trusting that we are getting somewhere now.
Good. Anyone from Unity? Wandi, are you on the call?
It's likely to be in a district meeting. I only came out now. They're still on, I suspect.
Right. Anyone else from Unity, or should we just jump onto Phosphorus?
Yes, Phosphorus is there. It's Ramapulana here. My deputy is also here, the deputy of the school. We only have the grade 12s with us, and hopefully when the grade 11s will be coming in a week's time, so we hope to jump on and push on with the project. Okay,
fantastic. So let's keep moving forward. I stole one of Enzo's points as well, and I wrote it in the bottom there that I think one of the projects that we're working on, and why I'm excited that I'm going to present Enzo to you as a marketing person, is what we're involved with in terms of this program is we've got to work towards changing perceptions. We are experimenting using a totally different delivery mechanism in our schools by, bringing the hotspots and the internet into our schools. It's really allowing us to bring content and programming and ideas that we haven't had access before. But we need to change perceptions. We need to change the way people see this as an opportunity. And of course, we are doing something very different. And we're going to have to drive behavior change. We're going to have to try and cultivate interest and excitement, and then, continue to work along this path to drive behavior change and embrace this technology that we now have at our disposal. Just to remind you again that we're 1 month in, we're into August. Today is a leadership count session, and the following 3 weeks, we will have a Beyond the Classroom, another World of Work, and then our online stage. So each week prior to the session, we will let you know who the guest speakers are. But I think we've hit the ground running. The program is up, and we're into month 2. So all looking good. And I had a meeting with the Karabo educators this morning, and the feeling is that the kids at the moment are under an intense amount of pressure with prelim exams coming and the amount of assignments and submissions that they need to make. So what we've decided to do is kick back on the live streamed lessons. And instead of running a live stream lesson, the educators will be available to take Q&A. So instead of actually doing a 90-minute lesson, they will be online as advertised and as scheduled. But I think you can encourage your kids, if they want to come on and ask for a question and for clarity around certain things around math science or life sciences, we will use those sessions for that purpose. So instead of canceling the sessions, we want to build behavior. We want to be online when we said we will be online. Those educators will be on the call, but they would rather do Q&A. So encourage your kids, if there's concepts or ideas in math or science or life sciences they want clarity on, then they need to jump onto those calls at that time. So without delaying this any further, I'm really, as I said earlier, excited to introduce you to Enzo. Enzo and I have been mates for a long time. We spend a lot of time together on the bicycle, riding together, which means we get to talk a lot about nothing. But Enzo has had an amazing career. I'm very proud that he's in our cycling team. He sort of elevates the quality of the cyclists in our crew. He's been in brand management and marketing for over 25 years. He's managed some of the most prestigious brands in the country. I think you can recognize some of them at the bottom. You've probably bought something from a campaign that Enzo has put out there, probably something you didn't need. You probably paid more for it than you needed to, but that's the art and the skill of the marketing geniuses who persuade you that you need to buy things and you need to be willing to recognize the value and pay the price. Many years ago, Enzo was recognized as one of the marketing personalities of South Africa. And since then, I think he's grown and shaped so much of what we see around us. So he's worked for the big three telco brands, Vodacom, Telkom, and now MTN. And so I guess all of you in one form or another have bought a product that Enzo has been responsible for shaping. He's a local lad, grew up in Eldos. He's done incredibly well. He'll tell you his own story. And I think the challenge I gave Enzo, but I think it's a challenge we need to solve in conversation, is what lessons can we take from the marketing world and bring that into our schools in terms of changing perceptions, driving behavior change, and growing utilization and uptake in terms of the product that we offer. So without delaying any further, Enzo, it's great to have you. Welcome. I'm going to dial out and you can put your presentation up. How's it? Welcome. You need to unmute, Enzo.
I'll unmute. Yeah. So thanks, Cliffy, for that introduction. Firstly, just I'd like to say to everybody, I'm really kind of honored to be invited to speak to teachers. You know, I always say I've been very fortunate in my life, and the three things that have shaped my life to have the marginal amount of success I've had up to now have been I'm fortunate enough to have been born to the right mother, and my mother was obsessive about education. The second thing I was lucky about and fortunate enough to have is I've always had great teachers. So at high school, my teachers really kind of shaped my life. And when I worked, I had kind of good bosses who shaped my life. So, you know, people like you play a massive role in shaping people like me ultimately. So anybody who's been successful in their careers will generally tell you about their parents and their teachers. So all of the people who run South Africa today, be that good or bad, have been shaped by people like you. So I want to use that kind of just to start and say that I really admire what you people do in shaping our society. So Cliffy said, you know, he told you that I was going to share, and I want this to be conversational. So, you know, rather than it being a monologue, if we can make it a dialogue, if you feel free to interrupt if there's something you don't understand or you want to ask a question, because I think that makes the session much richer for both of us, you know, for all of us. So I'll start here, but you know, for me, I like to kind of start by kind of saying just about myself, so you understand that I'm not just some executive at the other end of a computer screen. So, you know, so this is kind of the things that have shaped my life. So if you look at the left-hand side there, that's a picture of me when I was, my first passport, you know, I was born in Swaziland, actually. Because by my surname, you'd realize that my father is Italian, but my mother is black. So that's why I look like I look. But I've got an Italian name. And that's a picture of my mother there next to me. And she's the person who largely shaped me, you know. And I know Cliffy says I grew up in Eldos, but Cliffy thinks all colored people grew up in Eldos. I actually grew up in a place called Riverlea. And that block of flats there that you see, that's the block of flats I grew up in Riverlea. So if you know Riverlea at all, it's right by FNB Stadium. It's right on Colorado Drive, and that's the first block of flats. I grew up in one, not one of these two, but one to the right of that, and that shaped my formative years. And then to the right is a picture of my family, which I don't think you can see. One of the things, and I want to speak largely about my education, because I'm speaking to educators today and people who kind of shape young minds. is I went to a school called St. Barnabas College. That's the kind of those two doves there. And St. Barnabas College, and most of you guys are probably around about my age will know, was a school funded by Swedish donor money and the South African Council of Churches, and really was a school for South African activists at the time, their children. And Bishop Tutu was our chairperson. So that was the first part of shaping my worldview. You know, my mother used to work at the American consulate, and I used to work at the library in town just off Ilof Street. And one day I was in the library and I was filling out forms, and a high school girlfriend of mine had gone to America. And I saw forms to get a scholarship to a boarding school in America. And I ended up going to Phillips Exeter Academy, which is a very prestigious boarding school in New Hampshire. In fact, Mark Zuckerberg, the founder of Facebook, and I share that as being alumni, but I graduated long before him. I did fairly well at Phillips Exeter Academy, and I then spent 4 years going to Harvard University in Cambridge, Massachusetts. And that's where I did my undergraduate degree. I've got an honors degree in economics, and I came back to South Africa in 1994. And Cliffy spoken to you a bit about my work history, but really, you know, all of my education and my family have shaped kind of my worldview. And I think the environments a lot of you guys teach in are the kind of environments I grew up in. So I think I know the kids you deal with, because I was one of them once, and I understand the environments. And I've tried to take that, because I think your background is also a great gift to inform how I communicate to people in my role, right? So I want to start with this as a frame of reference, right? So there is, and this is, I think this is Sam Walton who said this, but regardless, for any business, you know, and we think about it that way, is there is only one boss, and that's the customer. And everything we do, you know, in every business I've been in, and that's the way I've shaped the organizations I've run, is to say, whatever we do needs to focus around, there are three things, and I want to share this with you. I want to pause after that, but you've got to understand what your customer wants, what they need, and what they desire. So what are the things that they want to buy from you? And you've got to shape your offering to what your customer wants, needs, and desires, right? So that's a concept that I think is the only concept that serves business well. So if you speak to the richest guy in the world is Jeff Bezos, and when I've read lots of books about Bezos and watched lots of interviews, he says, I don't know much about anything. The one thing I do know is I know how to understand customers. And that's kind of the frame of reference that I'm putting up here. So that's the first concept that I think from business you can apply in the classroom, because I think the number one customer you have is the student. And you've got to understand their world, what they want, what they need, and what they desire. And those students will differ. Those students will differ. You'll get some who are academic and what they want is intellectual stimulation. You'll want some that need reassurance, and you'll want some that maybe need nurturing. But you've got to understand the psychology of their customer and really serve their wants, needs, and desires. I guess, so that's the first concept I want to share with you. And this is a cartoon I put up when I did a course for Duke Business School on marketing for Barclays Bank. So, you know, and these just some slides, so you'll see Barclays there. But it says, you know, the bad news is our customers hate us. The good news, we have a lot fewer customers than we used to have, right? And that's the deal. If your customers don't like you, they leave, they drop off. So that's kind of quite a humorous view of that. This is a very, very important slide, and it looks very complex, but I'll unpack it for you. So the thing at the top looks like a funnel, right? And it is. It's called the conversion funnel. Now, I'll give you a bit of history, because I think the history around the conversion funnel is quite interesting. It was started by a guy at the University of Cape Town School of Theology, actually. His name is Jannie Hofmeyer, and he then left theology and started a research company called Research Surveys. And then, he was going to use it in theology around religion to say, if you want to convert people to your religion, you need to take them through stages. You start from them being aware of your religion. You then progress them to them being positive around your religion. Then you get them to come to church maybe once a month, and then you get them to come to church very often, 2-3 times a week, right? He then sold this as a piece of marketing intellectual property that's pretty much used all over the world now by research companies. So that's the conversion funnel at the top. So, the first 2 bits of the funnel, awareness and brand positivity, are really about kind of changing attitudes, right? The second bits are about changing behavior. Now, what you'll understand here, and I think Cliffy had it in his opening slide, is that the only way to change behavior is to change attitudes. You cannot sustainably change behavior without changing people's attitudes, right? So, and I think this as a model for teaching probably can apply, so that's it. So awareness, brand positivity, low usage into high usage. And then the first 2 bits, you change people's attitudes, and in changing attitudes, you then change their behavior. And what I've listed at the bottom are some of the tools we use in business to change people's attitudes. So, when you look at TV advertising, radio advertising, print advertising, sponsorship, those are all about attitudinal change. None of that changes behavior, right? But what we then know is once people are positive around the proposition we've put out there, what techniques do we have then to reel them in and sell them the product or service we're trying to sell them? And those are things like eventing, retail marketing, customer relationship management, one-on-one. Now, obviously in the digital world, you can do all of that in digital, right? But I want to pause there because this is an important concept that I think has application in teaching, right? So, and it does start from how do you provide inspiration on the left-hand side to kind of perspiration on the right-hand side. You've got to start by inspiring people to draw them into your message, and then use the science of education to get them to become learners. So I'm going to pause for a few seconds just to see if anybody's got any questions or inputs on this. Or Cliffy, if you'd like to make a comment, feel free.
The one comment I'm going to make is suggest that everyone mutes their mic unless they want to speak.
Okay.
But yes, I think the challenge that's coming from Enzo, and I mean, I'm thinking about it as he's speaking, is can you take these concepts and ideas and translate it, not just into the classroom, because I think in a school, you've got multiple customers. You've got in the classroom, your learners are your customers. If you're leading and managing the school, the other educators and the parents are your customers. So I guess in some instances, you have to tailor your behavior and strategy depending on who you see your customer in the moment. But I think the generic principle applies. I'm finding it very interesting thinking about marketing and sales principles in business as to how maybe we communicate and engage with learners and educators.
I'd say, you talk about parent-student, we have that in marketing. So if you're marketing teenage products, the way you think about it is the parent is the buyer, the teenager is still the customer. And I think in education, it's the same thing, and what the buyer wants is reassurance. What the customer wants is probably excitement, so and so really that's the concept. But if there are no questions here, I'll move on to the next one. And the next is really just, there are 2 things. And this is critically important in communication. And it's very important to understand with psychology, is that we make purchase decisions emotionally, and then we rationalize. And I think often in life, when we're trying to convince people about doing something, we start with kind of the rational bits. We start with the brain. We don't start with the heart. But 80% of all purchase decisions are made emotionally, right? So when I was younger, I used to like cars. And I can tell you that the first thing you do with the car is you say, is it sexy? And does it give me status, right? That's how you buy the car. Then you justify it to your parents and your friends by saying, you know, it's got good fuel consumption, it's got 5 airbags, etc., etc. But in every category, even washing powder, and I know this because I know I've got lots of people who've worked at Unilever, you first buy emotionally. A good washing powder says I'm a good mom, and then I kind of say, and actually Omo ensures that all of the colors in my washing are kind of, they stay vibrant. But I start with the emotional bit, right? And that's the way we construct advertising communication. We start emotionally and then move to kind of the rational bits, right? So, and I think even in education, you know, when I think about the greatest teachers, all the teachers I had, be they at university or at high school, the teachers that I still think about, the classes that I still remember, are the ones that pulled me in with an inspirational, emotional message. And probably some of the scientific detail is lost on me, but the big inspirational concept I remember. So I think that's kind of quite important, right? So I thought, you know, there are a few lessons I've learned, and these kind of come with audio visuals, and I think that always works best to demonstrate a message. So, you know, I said, the first thing is you always start with a customer and ask them what they want. You know, and that sounds easy enough, right? But I'm going to show you an example here which demonstrates that not everybody gets it. We understand it intellectually, but we never execute against it. So, but always start with the customer and ask them what they want. So this is just really kind of 4 pictures of the same bank. It's a Canadian bank called TD Bank, and it's, in terms of turnover to value, it's the #1 rated bank by investors in the US, right? So what did they do? The first thing is on the top left there, you'll see it says open 7 days. What their customers told them, customers like me who work, said, you know why I don't like banks? And they said, why? It says, because when I'm working during the week, you guys are open. On the weekend, on a Saturday afternoon, when I want to do banking, or on a Sunday, when I've got time available to do banking, you closed. So what did they do? They open 7 days a week. So you can go banking on a Sunday, right? When you're available. Now, even in South Africa today, I've done this to banks. I've given this to banks, and everybody in the bank nods, yet nobody changes their banking hours. Why? Because we tend to design solutions around our needs versus our customers' needs, right? Instead of saying, maybe we should give our staff off on a Monday morning as opposed to Saturday and Sunday. So that's the first thing. They open 7 days a week. The second thing on the right is they realize that for kids is where you kind of recruit all of your banking customers from. But all of the other banks, you know, as kids say with their money box, when they came to all the other banks sent them to one side and said, can you go over there, count your coins, put them in a bag, weigh them, and then bring them to us, because it's too much admin counting coins. It takes too much time. So they got somebody to design this machine called the penny arcade. So the kids loved going into the bank. So the kids would go on a Saturday morning with all of their coins and throw it into this penny arcade. And this penny arcade had a digital display that would be counting the coins all the time. That would show the kids how much money they've saved. And that kind of created a culture of saving and wanting to go into the bank, right? So that becomes a great innovation. Something that's a pain point, you turn into a customer point of delight. Opening earlier, open later, even on Sunday. So they open at 7 in the morning. Before you go to work, you can go bank, or you can go on a Sunday. The last thing, simple. You know, every time I've just been to the ATM, and I've got 5 or 6 steps, and every time I go to the ATM, I draw 1,000 Rand. Every time I go to the ATM, I draw 1,000 Rand. but I go through 5 or 6 steps to do that, right? What they did is you put your card in, you put your PIN, and the first thing that comes is pop up. It says the usual, and you press the usual, and it gives you your usual transaction. It gives you the 1,000 Rand. These are simple solutions, but it comes from asking your customer what they want and then delivering against that. And what they've got is the highest net promoter score of any bank in the US. So this is just, I'm just trying to shape, because, you know, I deal with these things every day, but this is just an example of what it means to be customer focused, you know. So I'll give you, you know, in your area, my son goes to an all boys school, and I fight with them every year when we do parent teacher meetings, because they always make them in the middle of the day when I can't come. You know, I say, I'm kind of earning money to pay the school fees, and you guys do it in the middle of the day. Can't we do it in the evenings on weekends when I'm available? You know, if I'm the customer and I'm paying, why are you doing it when it's convenient for you? So that's kind of really kind of just a challenge to the education establishment. The second is, you know, the American poet, Maya Angelou, is one of my favorite poets. And this is probably her most famous quote. She says, "People will forget what you said. People will forget what you did, but they will never, ever forget the way you made them feel." And when I think of the great educators in my life and my bosses, it's the people who kind of made me feel like I have hope, or, you know, I've got an opportunity in life, right? So I'm going to play you a very old ad, but it's an ad from Disney. And, you know, if you think Disney, we think of Disney as making movies, right? The reality is Disney aren't in the movie business. They're in the escapism business. People watch movies to escape from the drudgery of daily life, right? And you've got to think about that. What do you sell? You may teach. What are people buying from you? They're buying hope, right? They're buying hope of a better future. That's what I bought. Education for me was hope, to escape the block of flats I grew up in. You know, so this is this. So, and I want to show you this ad. So this is a very old ad, but every time I watch this ad, it still makes me feel like a kid, right?
Enzo, there's no sound. Enzo? No sound. No sound. Enzo, can you hear me? No sound on the video.
All right.
No sound on the video.
No sound.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Was there no sound there?
Yeah.
Okay.
No
Let
sound
me. What's that?
No sound on the video. No sound on the video. Play it again.
Okay. Let me see if I take my earphones off. Maybe it's my earphones. But the sound is there on my side. Give me a second.
Honey?
Can you hear now?
Yeah.
Honey?
What's wrong?
Honey, I can't sleep.
What's the matter?
I don't know. I worry we're drifting.
Drifting. Like a boat?
No, you know, apart. I mean, all we ever talk about anymore is the bills and work.
I know, but that's just natural. You know, that's just where we are in our lives, that's all.
And you never talk to me anymore.
What do you mean I never talk to you? I'm talking to you right now.
No, I mean like you used to.
What do you mean?
You know, you never talk to me in that special way like you used to.
I know, but we were younger then. We were in college.
See, that's what I mean. We're drifting.
No, we're not drifting. Just because I don't talk to you in that special way.
I love you. I love you very, very much.
So, you know, from that, you'll see that that Disney, you know, Disney sell magic, right? They sell magic and escapism. And every time I watch that ad, I still kind of feel transported into kind of my childly world. The third is, you know, that I've learned is if you're going to be a successful brand, sometimes you've got to take a stand and speak truth to power. And the next ad I'm going to play you is an ad from Apple. And Apple at the time were relaunching. And their view was the way to change perceptions about your brand is to ensure that the people on the very fringe, the trendsetters and the leaders in society are the ones who first adopt your product and everybody else will follow. And that's a fairly successful strategy for luxury brands like Apple, is how do you ensure that the people right at the edge, your brand appeals to them and you get that and you get the rest to follow. And I guess in, you know, even in my working life, and you guys will understand this being teachers, I don't look at the hierarchy when I try to drive change in my teams, especially when I've got big teams. You know, often what I've done is the first people, when I was at Telkom, among the first people I went to meet were guys like 4 or 5 levels below me, but they were shop stewards and they were very important at driving culture change and getting people to buy in what I wanted to do. And it's understanding who those people are and really kind of appealing to them. But often that comes with speaking truth to power. So I'll play you this and you'll see the people who've really changed the world.
Here's to the crazy ones, the misfits, the rebels, the troublemakers, the round pegs in the square holes, the ones who see things differently. They're not fond of rules, and they have no respect for the status quo. You can quote them, disagree with them, glorify or vilify them. About the only thing you can't do is ignore them, because they change things. They push the human race forward. While some may see them as the crazy ones, we see genius. Because the people who are crazy enough to think they can change the world are the ones who do.
Okay. So that's, then the next, I wanted to play you. So this is just saying, you know, so I'll give you a short anecdote where this comes from, but understanding what people buy from you versus what you're selling is very important. And there's a great Harvard Business School case study called Marketing Myopia. And it talks about the railways in America, right? And the railways in America thought that they were in the railway business. What they didn't understand that they were in the transport business. So what happened in the late 1800s, highways start getting built in America. And instead of them getting into the trucking business, they said, no, we don't sell trucks. So we don't provide trucking. We provide a rail service. And what happens today is all freight is essentially in America done by trucks and not by rail, because they didn't understand that they were in the transport business, not in the rail business. You know, and I think if you ask me what education is, and I've said it before and I say it again, I think you're in the business of selling hope. And how do you do that for these kids? This is, I mean, Cliffy tells me this is a deadpan video, but this is a professor at New York University. His name is Scott Galloway. I think what's important to look out for here is what are the things that appeal to humans? There are only 3 things that appeal to humans. You can either appeal to somebody's head, you can appeal to their heart, or you can appeal to their status need. They need to kind of procreate, if you look at kind of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And that's what brands do. They try to appeal to either provide you status, provide you emotional escapism, or they provide you kind of some intellectual appeal. And I think those are the three ways to communicate to any human beings. So have a look at this video.
Luxury brands give you self-expressive benefit. They signal something about you. This is not a timepiece. I've not wound it in 5 years. It's my vain attempt to express Italian masculinity and signal that if you mate with me, I'm more likely to take care of your offspring than someone wearing a Swatch watch. We like to think we're more evolved than that. We're not. The most powerful luxury brand in the world is Apple. Craftsmanship, an iconic founder, exceptional price point. Find another technology product that over time, as it's matured, has expanded its margins. This is the only tech product I can find that's been able to achieve that. Exceptional price point, control of their distribution. They opened stores just 13 years ago, now the most successful retailer in the store. The store I'm looking at here on Fifth Avenue to $500 million just in this one underground store. It's very much a global brand with exceptional brand management and core associations that extend beyond cultural boundaries. And what's the key? The self-expressive benefit. It's no accident they hired Paul Deneb out of YSL, or Angela Ahrens was willing to give up a $28 million job and move to Cupertino. She's not opening stores, she's building the next great luxury brand. Look how Burberry-esque this Apple Watch ad looks. Self-expressive benefit. There are only three things we do in business, and that's appeal to people's instinct to survive, food, housing, warmth, clothing, their ability, their instinct to love. Choosing moms, choose Jif. Buy Tide. If the clothes are washed with Tide, it shows that you love your family, and your desire to propagate. And that's, as we move down the torso, the margins get better and the business gets better, and luxury is in the business of propagation. Tesla is not an environmental car. It's an attempt to tell people you can afford a $120,000 car. The core axiom of evolution is men paying $150,000 for cars that can go 160 miles an hour in domains where you can only go 55. Makes no sense. Women will continue to pay $600 for ergonomically impossible shoes to try and solicit inbound offers from those same men. Don't laugh, I believe this stuff. Anyways. Apple is the only company in history that has successfully migrated down that torso, the only tech company in history. It used to be the best computer, then it sang to your heart with songs. Now it's the ultimate self-expressive benefit brand. This is a heat map of operating systems. This is the iOS operating system, the wealthy areas of Manhattan. As you go into the lower income households in suburbia, Android lights up. By the way, if you see purple in the middle, that's Jurassic Park. That's the dinosaurs using BlackBerry. This is Los Angeles. If you want to live on the coast or in Beverly Hills, you have to own an iOS. If you want to move inland or into South Central, you can use Android. The ultimate self-expressive benefit brand is now an iPhone. For those of you carrying an iPhone, it means you're wealthier and better educated and more likely to have more options in terms of who you mate with.
So, I mean, I think that makes the point just about the three types of communications you can use to kind of access people and get them to take notice of you. The next one is, I really, it's a lesson in life for me, and I believe this is my personal life story. You know, I grew up in a place not very similar. This is in the Cape Flats, but I grew up. I showed you the block of flats I grew up in, not very different from this. And you know, where you start should not determine where you end up. And in communication, I've very successfully, in a lot of brands I've marketed, used this mechanism, is to show, especially when you're marketing youth brands, is to show aspiration all the time. To show aspiration, because young kids buy into aspiration and hope. And so this is something we did for a Vodacom music product we were trying to sell after we rebranded.
Want is een rapper en jij zingen vol sliepen. Hello. Good morning. Hello. Good
So I'm going to play this ad really just because I think the power of belonging is really important to people. And how you create that in the classroom. I guess I'm trying to draw parallels to the classroom here. Evokes. This is something I did about 16 years ago. It was about a few weeks before my daughter was born. We went on a world tour to shoot this ad. I could only go to Argentina and Brazil, but this is what we were trying to do here is I was marketing. I was the brand manager or the group brand manager for Scarcella, and what we're trying to do is get young people to take notice of the brand. And again, it's about belonging, homecoming, but it's also about having an external worldview. So
I land in Buenos Aires and get a ride into the city. Drive the widest streets I've ever seen. Feels weird having a taxi all to myself. Go out for a beer, but it tastes like lemonade. Wander around the city, sleep in some dodgy hotel, then get on the next flight to Rio. On the Copacabana, the girls shake what their mums gave them, and so do their mums. Plan to go up Sugarloaf Mountain, but something else comes up. Catch a bus to Mexico. Hook up with a bunch of guys called Jesus and Jose and a dog called Frank. Wake up later. Sure. Buffet, second half. New York. I go to jazz bars, gay bars, strip clubs, nightclubs, Puerto Rican pickup joints, killing whiskey, why. When all I really want is Ubi. I go to LA looking for movie stars, but all I find is some crazy guys on Venice Beach. Get a ride with a truck driver and wind up in the desert, flat on my back. So I go to Japan. The trains are fast, but there's nowhere to sit. Can't afford a hotel, so I walk the streets and try to eat soup with chopsticks, drink sake, and sing karaoke in Japanese. Next, I do China. Ask for beer and get green tea. Don't think I'd ever seen a black man before. I go to Athens to get some culture. Instead, I meet a girl who tries to steal my taxi. We go for coffee, but it turns into hip-hop non-stop. After 3 days, I'm like, oh my God, and I follow home to Newcastle, where her old man, brother, and me drink warm, flat beer. And it starts getting a little too cozy, so I catch a plane to Egypt. I'm hot, I'm thirsty, and then it hits me. I'm a South African, and only one thing can satisfy my thirst.
Okay. I'm not going to go through this, Cliffy, because I think it'll take too long. But this is really, I'll really talk through this. You know, this was in 2010, Vodafone in the UK bought a majority stake in Vodacom South Africa. I was the brand director at the time. And they really said to us is, you guys have got to change the brand to be in line with what we're trying to do globally. And you've got about 4 or 5 months to do that. And we undertook this challenge. And we did it on April 1st, 2011. We started off by having a concert for 20,000 people at Orlando Stadium. And at Orlando Stadium on the 1st of April, we revealed the new logo. And within 1 month, we rebranded 30,000 outlets that used to be blue and were red. We got rid of pretty much all of the t-shirt, caps, everything in the market. We got customers to recognize the new brand and the new identity from 0% recognition up to, I think, 72% recognition, all in 1 month. You know, we spent about 300 million Rand on that. But, you know, what the inspiration to my team is, at the time was, you know, if we're going to try to change our image and get people to believe it, you've got to go big, you know, and make a massive statement, because you have to present yourself as being better than the last iteration of yourself. So that's kind of what we did. And the person who probably does this best in the world, you know, because we all need to reinvent ourselves personally, even, is Madonna. You know, so Madonna every 4 or 5 years reinvents herself. And the new Madonna is always better than the old Madonna. So I think that's just an example of, you know, if you're going to change your image, make sure you go big. And I think this applies in every facet of life, whereas it's to your brand as a teacher, as a person, to your school brand, to your district brand. I think that's, this is what you've got to do, you know. And I think, yeah, I think in Gauteng, the MEC for Education is probably the best communicator that we have in the public sphere. He does this kind of stuff very well. Okay. And then sometimes things just come along, you know, sometimes things just come along where there are opportunities that you've got to take. So, you know, you don't ask a question or try to design a solution, but an opportunity comes along. So about 5 years ago, I get into my office and my secretary says to me, there's been this big box delivered for you. And I wish I had it here. It's in my son's room. But it's a big yellow Puma running shoe, about that big. And it comes with a business card. And it says, if you want to be associated with the fastest man on the planet, please call me. So I gave this to my team and I said to them, call the agent, you know. It turns out it was Usain Bolt's agent. And my team's like, we can't afford him. This is what he wants. So I picked up the business card. So I said, let me call him. So the guy's called Ricky. He's based in London. So I call him up. I say, Ricky, this is Enzo. You sent me this. He says, okay, let's have a conversation. I said, how much money are you guys looking for? You know, he says, we're looking for a 2-year deal. This is the money we're looking for. And I said to him, Ricky, do you know the South African market? And he said, no, I haven't been there, Enzo. I said, well, you've got to come here. I said, you know, football is the biggest sport in South Africa. There are 2 big teams. There's kind of Kaizer Chiefs and Orlando Pirates. The 3rd biggest team is a team called Morocco Swallows. And I said, I can sponsor Morocco Swallows for 10 million rand. And Usain Bolt is not as big as Morocco Swallows, you know. I said, you've got to take that. So that's my starting point. Unless you've got more fans than Morocco Swallows, I'm not going to pay you more than 10 million rand. And that was the negotiation. And they wanted 10 times that. They wanted 100 million rand. Essentially, we got to sponsor Usain Bolt for less than 10 million rand. But what it wasn't the right opportunity at the right time. And we took the opportunity. And this was, we launched fiber, so fiber to the home. And we were able to use Usain Bolt's image to make this ad. I'll tell you some anecdotes. You know, he's so successful that he only has 1 week where all the brands from all over the world come to Jamaica to shoot. And they only give you a 5-hour slot. So within your 5 hours, you've got to do everything you want to do. So my team went there and they shot this ad. And this is, yeah, it's a piece of work I'm really proud of. And I think of all the brands I've worked on, the one that has, you know, so if you're in any trouble and you think that your personal brand or your school's brand is in trouble, any brand can be turned around. Telkom had some of the worst scores that I've ever seen in my career. And today, Telkom is one of the top 10 brands in South Africa. And it's kind of this kind of work and the work we did with babies that really turned around people's perception. It's saying, how do I do things that aren't expected? And how do I ensure I do big things? Right. So this is just.
Usain, do you see yourself going into coaching?
Yeah, I'm actually working with someone at the moment, a real talent.
All right. So this is too long a story. I won't go through this. And then I really want to start on this one before I kind of close for questions. You know, sometimes as a brand, you have to be, you know, I spoke about the Apple work being on the leading edge of society. But sometimes as a brand, you've got to be more than a brand and say, how do I educate society around the changes in perception that need to take place? So I was offered the job of Chief Operating Officer for MTN South Africa in 2016, and I joined. And in December of that year, I got approached by South African Rugby, who I knew well from kind of previous dealings. And the president's a guy called Mark Alexander, and Mark said, you know, can we have a coffee? So I said, let's have a coffee. You know, And we met up, and he said, you know, the Springboks need a sponsor. They've been without a sponsor. We're bleeding cash. We need help. So I said, look, we're not looking to sponsor rugby. And the problem for our customer base is rugby is seen as a white Afrikaans sport, and our brand is very much kind of black and urban. And unless you guys are committed to transformation, you know, you know, it's going to be a very difficult sell for me to kind of to sponsor this, because it's a lot of money. And you know, you said to me, we committed to transformation. After that, Rassie came on board. They really kind of said that they see this as being a key part of where they were trying to go. And yeah, and I think you know, the rest is history. It's probably one of the better investments I've made in marketing. But you know, what we took is, as opposed to going for the Scarcella type advertising, which we did, which is kind of mixed race people, all kind of waving the flag and pretending to be united. We really tried to tap into the history of black rugby in South Africa. That says, you know, rugby has great black history that's just never been told. And instead of making ads, we made kind of short movies. And that really changed the perception of the Springboks in a small way, but also changed the perception of black rugby. So this is a piece of work that I'm quite proud of, that we made. It's a short movie. It's about 2 or 3 minutes. So I'd ask you to watch it, and then we'll move to closing questions.
It's been called the Alcatraz of South Africa. It's been compared even with Devil's Island. Unless you are prepared to deal with that, you cannot govern South Africa.
There were a lot of beatings, a lot of torture and hard labor. Bebecinga bayasahlukanisa ngempatho yabo kanti baqinisa indebano yethu ngalo hlobo. Yabona bebengaziboni njengabantu. A lot of the time, you were by yourself, just you and your thoughts.
Sport is divided into white, black, coloured, and is normal sport possible in an abnormal society? But can sport and politics be regarded as separate issues?
Asisonke kumidlalo, ingqondo zethu bezikhululeka endaweni besikolo. What Steve did with rugby on Robben Island changed the course of our country forever.
A fairy tale ending for a unified South Africa.
It went beyond a mere sporting event, didn't it? It actually united the whole of South Africa.
The solution lies elsewhere, and that elsewhere, amongst others, is sport.
All right. And then, you know, one of the last lessons, and this is sometimes when I speak to younger people and broader groups of people, is, you know, I think what I increasingly try to do with my life, and we do it sometimes with the communication we have, is to reframe your happiness around what you have rather than around what you don't have. And I've got, you know, I can either frame my job as, I've got a very difficult job, a highly pressurized job. I work 12 hours a day. You know, before COVID, I used to be out of the country for 10 to 15 days a month, et cetera, et cetera. And I found myself complaining about those things. Yet what I didn't realize is all the gifts that I'd been given in life. And so, you know, I try to leave without trying to be a motivational speaker, but I try to leave on this note that says, you know, if you want to be happy, reframe it around really having an appreciation for what you do. And, you know, this is kind of a mock of my passport, but my passport is filled with experiences from around the world that really have been gifts given to me by all the companies I've worked for. So, you know, that's kind of my story. I don't know if you guys have any questions. You know, I know it's kind of, I kind of in there, but you know, I was trying to draw parallels with teaching, which I don't know very well. My life, my ambition is when I'm 55 to retire and become a teacher, actually. You know, so I'm saving all my money to that so I can retire earlier and go into teaching. So one day I'll be with you guys, but I don't know if you have any questions.
Enzo, firstly, let me, before we go to questions, just to thank you very much and maybe suggest stop screen sharing so we can see everyone on the screen.
I will stop screen sharing. So it should be stop screen sharing now.
That's brilliant. Thank you very much. Okay, so we're throwing this open. I guess, you know, when Enzo did a dry run with me yesterday, and every time I spend time with him on the bicycle, he always blows me away with his stories and his anecdotes and just how much of a hand he's had in so many of these campaigns. But for me, what this talk about was learning how much of the principles that he brings to marketing and selling that we deal with every day in our own lives. And I just found it incredibly insightful. And I can see Wandi nodding, and Wandi you can always read because he nods his head when he wants to speak. So Wandi, I'm actually just going to pivot and hand the floor over to you to bring us into the conversation.
I want to thank Enzo for such an insightful, very interesting presentation. I'm truly impressed with him. Quite an exciting man, very experienced. I just wanted to ask a question. When one considers to rebrand anything, yourself or the school, when is it the right time? Or for how often should one rebrand himself or the school?
I don't think you should ever. I mean, the intention of brands is, you know, how do you ensure that your people's perception of you is greater than your kind of intrinsic value, right? So if there's nothing wrong with you, so I'll just give you, because the way we track brands is to say, every month we put out a survey into the market that says, what do you think of MTN, XYZ, right? So we look at on certain brand scores. So what do we want to stand for? If we want to stand for innovation, if we want to stand for value, if we want to stand for South African, how do we score on that with our core customers, right? And if those scores are good, what you need to do is keep on investing in what you're doing, right? So once you see those scores turn, right, then you've got to say, maybe there's an opportunity to rebrand. And sometimes those things turn because you're not executing well enough against that strategy, or it turns because the market has changed. How you've positioned yourself is no longer relevant, you know? So, and you see that with fashion brands all the time. So those are the two things. Either you're not, when you speak to kind of Rassi Erasmus, he says at halftime, he has one of two talks with his teams. Either we are not executing the plan, or the plan we're executing and it's not working. So we've got to change the plan. And those are the two reasons you've got to rebrand. And it's so for the telecom bit was to drive reappraisal. People thought of telecom as government, slow, etc., etc. So what you were trying to get people is to do is take, because actually we were investing a lot in advertising, but nobody saw the advertising because it just went. So what came out, I don't know if you remember the baby campaign, people then kind of sat up and took notice and said, okay, these guys are actually, but you've also got to have, when I talk about emotional and rational, you can't only rebrand emotionally, right? You've got to say perceptually with communication, I'll rebrand, but the product's also got to change. The product's got to be better than it was before. You can't have a bad product and just spend money on communication. If that makes sense.
Yeah, does make sense. Does.
So Wandi, the short answer is you have to have a plan and you have to measure. And based on those two, you can work with those two. So you need both.
You know what? Our school has worked so well. I think we are one of the very few schools in the country that has been in the media for the past 5 years like this. So I'm concerned that maybe we are losing touch. We may want to rebrand and come up with a different angle so that people can know us better in a different way. You know, well, they know us academically. We tried to use the choir and it worked very well. But now what else do we do? We still need to think. Yeah, we need to see whether we can think out of the box to see how we can do other things to rebrand the school from time to time.
But Wandi, my question to you is, to what end are you branding your school? If you get more well-known, does it bring more income? Are you branding your school because you want to attract more learners? Are you branding your school because you want to attract a different type of learner? So I think you need to be clear as to if you're building your profile and you're marketing an image or a message out there, what is your objective, right? Or are you just trying to have a good reputation, but to what end in a public school?
Yeah. That's what I mean when I said it worked for us, because we got so many companies coming to us even before we applied for sponsorship, because the school was up there. Everybody saw the school. Besides academics, they saw the school on social media. They saw the school and singing for Art Tambo Foundation, singing for Mandela Foundation. So even when I sit down and just make a call, even the telecom of this world, the ESCOM of this world that does not have money, thinks of sponsoring the school, because the school is branded. They take it as one of the schools that they want to associate themselves with. So we also attract the best learners by doing so. We're attracting the best learners. That is why our school will always produce more than 5 learners with 8 distinctions, because every parent wants to bring their child to the school, and most of the time we get kids who are very smart and very focused.
Good.
Right product, right reputation, right results. I think Musa had a question.
Yes. How are you, Enzo?
I'm very well, and yourself, Musa?
I'm good. Okay, I'm actually on the very same light as Wandi, but mine is much more personal. It's not about the overall school, but it's about me as an individual teacher. So beyond the concept of rebranding that I saw, every single thing from all of the ads that you in your story that you've been mentioning, one of the concepts that for me that was, that came out the most was the concept of constantly reimagine, because if I see all of those ads that you've been showing us, none of them are similar. It's not that you, for once, did you take an idea that worked for you, let us just say with Vodacom, and, brought it in with Telcom. None of that ever happened. So, and I'm asking what the concept of reimagining simply because of the type of time that I'm currently in during this entire pandemic. So I'm in a classroom. So my traditional way of teaching doesn't actually work right now. So I need to reimagine of how a teacher needs to be. So the first point is that my learners are not mentally well simply because of what's happening externally. Let us just say they might be having, psychological problems. Maybe a mother is retrenched, and then they have to come into the classroom carrying that burden. So I just want to ask to say that, no, how do you work around the concept of reimagining? Simply because I want to reimagine myself as a teacher. I'm no longer just an individual that a teacher and passes on content, but now I need to actually become a psychologist. I need to play a bigger role than just simply teaching.
Yeah, I mean, it's a fascinating question, because I think not only are you struggling with it, I think we're all struggling with it, right? But I'll tell you the principles I'd apply. So when we construct a brand, so the way we construct brands is the way we construct humans. I don't want to become too technical today, but I'll use an example because I think it is. So firstly, you got to construct, and I think you're doing it, right? By saying, when I look at my customers' needs, what are their emotional needs and what are their rational needs, right? And how have those changed, right? And then when we construct a brand, we start with something in the middle called the bullseye that says, if somebody came from outer space and landed on Earth, what would they say about my brand if they just saw it for kind of 10 seconds? So Volvo is a good example of this because they're consistent. So Volvo is about safety, right? So people will say safety. Everybody says, you know, so Cliffy drives Volvos, you know, and then you say, okay, in order to deliver against that, what do I need to stand for emotionally? And what do I need to stand for rationally, right? So those are kind of a bit like a human being. What are my emotional attributes? What are my rational attributes? You know, Enzo's a nice, warm guy. He's also smart, let's say. You know, those are the two, emotional and rational. And then you say, in order to reinforce that, what are some of the channels I have and the techniques? I've got online classroom. I've got email. You know, I can create little WhatsApp videos that I can send to the class on a weekly basis to motivate them, and then say, what are the channels I have? Because I'm actually doing that, Musa, by the way, because I've got, you know, in my team, there's some people who live alone, you know, and they've been 4 months now working from home. And I say, how do I stay in touch with everybody? Because my direct reports I see all the time. So on a Friday afternoon, after I've poured myself a glass of wine, I make a WhatsApp video and I say, this is the theme for the week. This is what's happening. This is what I see. Is everybody okay? And I send it out to the group. You know, so that kind of stuff. So what channels do I have? I've got obviously the online learning classroom. I've got email. I could do a WhatsApp chat group. Those kind of become the communication platforms I have to do that. And then the rational bit, which is your product, that says, how do I start communicating? Because in a physical world, sometimes we sense where people are, right? I see this with my kids. In an online world, often we're quite abrupt with the way we communicate and the way we write, right? So we come across as quite cold. So I've actually started watching the way I write completely. Like, you know, I write an email, and because I'm in a hurry, I write it very abruptly. Then I think, you know, Lindy has been alone at home for 3 weeks. She hasn't heard from me. The first thing she hears from me is, the first words are, when is this project going to be ready? Like, how is that going to make a video? Do you understand what I'm saying?
I'm sorry to interject it for you. I'm actually kind of get the idea. I think it will bring it much more home to you. I think is it the slogan for MTN says everywhere you go, and obviously now because we are joining a pandemic, we can't go anywhere we go, and we can't be everywhere you go. So in that aspect, how would one actually now try to reimagine to say that no, how is MTN then going to be relevant during this time of pandemic? I'm just trying to bring it back home to you.
No, but that's exactly so.
I'm going to add in. I'm going to butt in here because to prove that even though Enzo has been in this game for 25 years and worked for the biggest brands, he gets it wrong, you know, because he says if they come from Mars and they land here, they're going to say Volvo is a safe car. I work in the television industry, and when all the people who see me in my Volvo, they don't think I drive a Volvo because it's safe. They say it's a car for old white men.
That's the target audience. But yeah, so you know, but that's exactly so. Musa, what I was talking to one day about is that, you know, so everywhere you go is around coverage and being ubiquitous, right? So everywhere, all of a sudden it's about, you've got to go to connecting you to the things and people you love. That's where we need to go to, because all of a sudden data is the new social currency, because data can connect me to my loved ones. I'm speaking to you guys now, and it's amazing. And this is made possible by MTN. But at the same time, I can call the people I really care about and stay connected with them. You know, I've in fact, so firstly, I'm sure you saw our results today, but data traffic's gone through the roof. But, you know, I've probably been closer to my father, who's 78. And I'm quite a family person, so I see my father a lot. But he's learned now to video call. So I'm on a video call with him every night. You know, I've run out of things to say to him. We speak to each other so often, you know. But, you know, so all of a sudden, we may be, be far but stay close is kind of how you reimagine the positioning. But the reason none of those ads look the same, because each of those brands who you target are all different, and you've got to construct that. Who's my customer? What do they want, need, and desire? How do I construct my brand to deliver that? Because if I do that, money is a consequence of that. If I do that properly, people will part with money. So focus on the product, focus on delivering the emotional benefits and the rational benefits. And that's a consequence, and I'm still, the people who did that for me at school, I'm still friends with. My high school teachers, I still reach out to. I was supposed to have a 50th birthday this year, and a few of the people who were my high school teachers were still alive are on that list, because they've put me where I am today.
Manda, I saw you had your hand up earlier. Is there a question you still have?
Yes, I do, Clifford. I'm having a bit of network issues. Can you guys hear me?
We can hear you, yeah.
All right, I have a quick question for Enzo, and I'm part of the Karabo Center group that has generated the app and trying to upload content in there. And I've got a two-part question for Enzo. The first one is, how do we try and get these telco companies like your MTN and your Vodacom and your CLC to play a role in trying to get the data to be, the app to be zero rated? Because I watched your session very carefully and it was very inspiring and very motivating. But one of the key things that I picked up from what you said, Enzo, was that you need to look at your customers and you need to be solving your customers' problems. You need to be giving them something that is going to help them. So our customers is more beneficiaries rather are these learners. And one of the things that keeps coming up is the fact that they love the app so much, they love the content, but the problem is that they can only use it while they still have data on, or in the cases where Clifford is helping with the other schools with hotspots, they can download the content. But how can we get as a team to get these telco companies to come on board and try to help out? And the second part of the question is to Enzo himself, being the man he is and having branded so many companies successfully, what can he do to try and help us to be a better brand, and what can he do to make sure that we try and deliver to our beneficiaries with as low cost as possible? So that's my
Manda, the first thing is you're going to have to take up cycling, and you're going to spend time on the bicycle. Up with Enzo. That's my first advice.
I can cycle with him every day if I have to. I just need us to help these learners.
Okay, Manda. So firstly, on the zero rating of data, I mean, I think really good provocation from you. So what we've done, and we've just published it in the annual results today, we've allowed for anybody who has an educational website to apply for it to be zero rated. So if you get my details from Cliffy, I'll put you in touch with a woman by the name of Jackie O'Sullivan. You may know her husband. Her husband's got a show on Kaya FM. So David O'Sullivan's wife. So Jackie is running that program, right? And she will, if you apply, we can zero rate that, right? So just because what we realized, and you're right, our customers' needs are, what we realized is in the lockdown period, you can have online learning, but if people don't have data, they can't learn. So what we've done is we've zero rated all of universities and high school sites. So that's the first thing. On helping you guys, so I serve on the boards of quite a few NGOs. I'm happy if you reach out to Cliffy to say, what discussions can we have? They can just be guiding discussions on how you guys can make more people access this. In fact, I'm working. It's quite funny because the Americans are very good at this. I'm on the board of a organization called Grassroots Soccer. And what they do is they started out with using football to communicate to young kids about AIDS education. They're now more broadly female reproductive health? How do you get kids in the township to stay sexually healthy, you know? But yeah, so what we're trying to do is we're trying to get, we do an online auction at the end of the year. We're trying to raise $1 million. And one of the things we're trying to say is, what IP do we have that we can help Sia Kolisi's foundation with? Because Sia's foundation is taking off. But what they're not good at is they're not good at the stuff Cliffy spoke about, strategy and measurement. They're trying to do too much and they're not measuring the impact. And if Sia wants to have a lasting legacy, he needs to know the impact his foundation is making. And we can do that for them. So those are some of the things we're offering. You know, so I can, on some of those things, I guess I can help. Yeah.
Thank you so much. And then on a more lighter note, what kind of bicycle should I get for our cycling lessons?
The cheapest one that doesn't break. These things can be expensive. You spend as much money as you have, Manda.
Okay, thank you so much, Enzo.
Manda, I'll wrap up the session on an anecdote. So I took up cycling, and I wasn't aware just how brand conscious cycling was. And bicycles are incredibly expensive. But if you get into the world of cycling, you very quickly realize how driven it is by certain global brands. But I was overseas at the time. And, you know, when you step up and these bikes get more and more expensive, and my ambition was to buy a carbon bicycle. So I bought a no-name brand bicycle. I was in Canada, and I brought this bicycle back to South Africa. And I'm cycling with Enzo and all of these guys. And they've all got the most beautiful, sexy, branded, global branded bikes. And they're constantly on my case around riding this bike that I'm the only person in the country that has this no-name brand anywhere. So it's very much a brand sport, but Enzo will guide you. So I think we should wrap up. I think our staying power is 90 minutes, and we've hit that mark. But just to thank Enzo, I found it an incredibly interesting session. And although it's not so much about leading and managing schools, the principles apply. And I think the challenge now for each one of you is to go away and think about some of the things Enzo was saying and how you could bring that into your own world. So the session is recorded. Enzo maybe will share with us his slides. And I think the idea is to take some of those principles back with you and think about this issue around what you stand for, what your mission is, who your customers are, how you're going to shift them from where they are to where they need to be. COVID is massively challenging, but it's given all of us permission to rethink, to reset, to rethink our roles and how we can deliver our product and how we can take our kids and their families from where they are to where we need to get them. So I found this session inspiring. I hope all of you did. And that you'll join us next week, where we are looking for a guest speaker who will be dealing with big themes in the classroom. And, you know, just to say, Enzo is amazingly networked, and he's put me onto a long list of possible speakers that I'm hoping to bring to you guys in different sessions. But just to thank Enzo for giving up his time. And hopefully all of you are MTN customers. And if not, you will think about going to buy some of his product so that he can justify to his bosses that he spent an hour working for the company. So thanks to everybody. Oren, as the sponsor, you want to have the last word?
I don't think there's much I can add, Cliffy, but just once again, thank you, Enzo. That was a very interesting conversation, more than just a presentation, really. It's a debate. So thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you, guys.
Goodbye, everyone. Stay safe.